Hello YouTube, this is Asatsu5, and I might have did things a little bit out of order. I posted the video, and then I went to Instagram and I flagged his video and reported it for inciting violence and stuff. Because I feel that although he's not physically holding a gun to me and my family, he did threaten my people. He did threaten them. He called them traitors, and he said he'll treat them as such. Called them his enemies. And the point of this video is I flagged the video and reported it before you got to read it. Some of you may have read it already. There was over 4,575 likes on it, which is kind of disturbing. But I want to show you the post. I don't have video editing software that works right now, so I can't actually put it on screen. But I want to show it to you on your phone. I took a screenshot before I flagged it, and before I made the first video because I was reading it to you. But I'm going to put it to the camera, pause it, read it. I encourage you to read it. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't feel I'm wrong. And I'll explain a little bit after this. But okay, pause that, read it to your best ability. I'm sorry for not having good video editing software, but he is definitely making some bold statements. And I'm going to explain some things to you. I'm going to define terrorism as I read it. I can't quote. I read this several years ago, and I used it as an argument to a liberal teacher. So the definition of terrorism that I read when I made this argument to the teacher, college professor, and she's not a bad woman. It's just she has different views. Is the use of violence or terror against a civilian population to further a religious or political goal. So let's just say the Columbine shootings, Virginia Tech, any of the school shootings before AFTA came into play. Those were not terroristic threats. Those were not acts of terrorism because they were just shooting up the place because they had a bad day and they suck at life. They were like, I hate life, so I'm going to take as much people down with me as possible. That's not terrorism. But if Columbine shooter said, I'm doing this in the name of Allah, or if I'm doing this for animal rights, American Animal Liberation Front, firebombing some places, those are acts of terrorism. And I want to point something out. The difference between a terrorist or the difference between a revolutionary and a treasonist, someone that commits treason, is that the revolutionaries win, whether they be just or not. But just like the Bolsheviks in World War I, the Soviet revolutionaries, if they would have failed at assassinating the Tsar and taking power, they would be committing treason, which they did commit treason, but they would have been executed. Just like the difference between the American revolutionaries and the Confederates in the American Civil War. And I want to point something out. I'm not promoting the Confederates or the Confederacy. I'm not at all. But the difference between the American revolutionaries and the Southern Confederate Army is that the revolutionaries won. The Confederates lost. And I'm not talking about political goals versus American revolutionary and Confederate. I'm talking about what makes them treasonous, what makes them traitors, and what makes them revolutionaries. The American revolutionaries in 1700s, late 1700s, they were actually able to win against the British. If they would have lost, they committed treason. They will be executed. The Confederate Army, the Southern states, they rebelled against the American government, fired the shots on Fort Sumter. They committed treason, and for some reason, Abraham Lincoln pardoned them. Didn't want to execute everybody who committed treason. He didn't feel that was in the best interest of preserving the Union. And in my opinion, Abraham Lincoln was one of the better allies of the South, Confederate South after the war. And I don't think Abraham Lincoln was the progressive that we think of him today. I think he might have been potentially racist, but his job was to preserve the Union, so he preserved it in the way that he knew how. But that's beside the point. Abraham Lincoln had mercy on the Confederates, and he ended up getting shot, and USS Grant became president. And he fought the Confederates for 5 Aprils. That's how I remember it. Across 5 Aprils, 1881 to 1885, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm quoting the dates off the top of my head. But history is my subject. I love history. But yes, I feel he was making threats towards me and my people. So I reported him on Instagram, and now that post is blocked, blurred out, and everything. But I really want you to read this. And yes, feel free to tell me if I was overreacting. Feel free to do it. I'm just saying, if someone approached me and my family and called them traitors and enemies, and I would treat you as such, I would feel threatened, and I would act accordingly. See if I can get it to be not as blurry. That's it. I'm going to stop C5, and I'm out.